This is Under the Classic Rock. I'm Bill Hemberger. Today we're doing a couple firsts for this podcast. Our first 100 million plus seller in record sales, and our first solo classic rock artist. Come along as I delve into the classic style of Linda Ronstadt.
There are some things you can't cover up with lipstick and powder. Yes, he really walked me over good. He was a credit to his gender. Let me tell you that it's so bad. It makes me feel so sad. Colorado. Been down, but not like this before. Can't be round this kind of show no more. You're no good, you're no good, you're no good, baby, you're no good.
Linda sang her way out of a musical household in Tucson, Arizona of the early 1950s. Her family was steeped in music, brothers in choirs, father and mother playing a number of instruments, aunts and uncles as professional singers. She has stated in many interviews that by the age of 10, she had listened to all the music she would sing in her life, and that she would never go beyond those styles because she would have no authentic reference in which to choose her own music.
I am a man of constant sorrow.
In the 1960s, Linda's first journey into singing music herself was to form a folk trio with her brother and sister. They called it the Three Ronstadts. Soon, the trio expanded by adding guitarist Bobby Kimbal and a banjo player by the name of Richard Saltus. They called this new group the New Union Ramblers.
Lord, when I was 16, I was the flower.
The Ramblers played small Tucson clubs until about 1961 when Linda's brother and sister left because of family responsibilities, and Bobby Kimbal left for LA to further his folk career. It was Ronstadt's association with Kimbal that would launch her national career. While enrolled at the University of Arizona in Tucson, Linda kept up communications with Kimbal, writing songs via mail and telephone. And it was during those conversations that Kimbal kept pressuring her to move to Los Angeles so they could kick their musical relationship to the next level. Linda finally took his advice late in 1964.
Tell me stories I call to the hobo.
When she got to LA, Bobby Kimbal was already working with folk rock guitarist Kenny Edwards. The three of them played coffee houses and restaurants in the LA area. It was a gig at Olivia's soul food restaurant in Ocean Park that got them and her noticed by a couple record company execs. Demos were recorded and the Stone Ponies were born. The band was eventually signed to Capitol Records, where Herb Cohen took over management of the band, but he was more interested in Ronstadt as opposed to the band. The first Stone Pony album had very little of Linda singing lead and thus very little airplay. In 1967, for the second album, Evergreen Volume 2, they searched for a song that would feature Ronstadt as the lead singer and would get on the radio. They found Different Drum in a bucket of demos from an obscure LA writer by the name of Mike Nesmith, who later played with the Right. Beat of a Different Drum was recorded with Linda on vocals, but with professional studio musicians and none of the Stone Ponies.
You and I travel to the beat of a different drum. How can you tell by the way I run? Every time you make eyes at me.
Linda was in and out of the Stone Ponies from 1965 to 1968. A third album was released, but with little success. Linda finally went solo in 1969. Now I need to stop here for just a second.
No! No good!
Ronstadt crossed over into many different styles, but I'm only concerned here on this podcast with her classic rock roots.
Oh well, I feel so good today.
Her first solo effort started in 1969, like I said, with hand-sewn Homegrown. Then the album Silk Purse, and then the self-titled Linda Ronstadt in 1972. All of them country-styled albums. Now, in the 90s and 2000s, she ventured into Spanish and Mexican albums, Broadway show tunes, standards, and jazz. But like I said, I'm going to stick to her classic rock roots here on Under the Classic Rock. Even though Ronstadt ventured into different styles of music, she always had her roots in rock because her ears were planted on radio speakers listening to rock radio as a kid in Tucson. After her first 3 country-styled albums, she got involved with George Martin protege Peter Asher, and he started to push Linda into the rock genre. She put together her own band. Listen to this. Randy Meisner, Bernie Leadham, Glenn Frey, and Don Henley, who became the original Eagles lineup. So I guess Linda really had a good ear for A-list players.
You can say that again. You can say that again.
Okay, we get the point.
Right. With Asher as her producer and all his experience with the Beatles, Ronstadt evolved into the Linda Ronstadt that became the staple of radio in the 70s and 80s, cracking the top 10 Billboard charts with albums like Heart Like a Wheel, Prisoner in Disguise, Hasten Down the Wind, and her best-selling album, Simple Dreams. The top 10 rock albums continued with Peter Asher in the producer's chair till about 1983. Ronstadt then took a gamble by producing an album of jazz standards called What's New. Ronstadt did not put out a rock album again until 1989 with Cry Like a Storm, Howl Like the Wind.
Could have been the kiss of my life.
Through the 1990s and 2000s, Ronstadt was in and out of the rock genre. Her last rock album was We Ran, using Tom Petty's band, the Heartbreakers, as her backing band. The album never cracked the top 100.
Wait around and see.
Linda Ronstadt is a true artist, painting many styles with her voice, which is why I think she ventured away from the classic rock genre so many times in her career. And it was natural talent through all those styles that enabled her to rack up over 100 million in record sales. In 2011, she retired, and in 2013, she revealed why she retired. Linda was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, which is an ailment that attacked her vocal cords, and she could no longer sing. And before the microphone slips from my hands here, some true and false about Linda. She was never inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. False. She was inducted in 2014. And true, Linda Ronstadt did work with Frank Zappa. The two collaborated on a TV commercial because they were both being managed by Herb Cohen at the time, so they wrote a TV commercial soundtrack for an advertising agencies. This was in the late 60s, but the cut was never used. You can hear and download Under the Classic Rock on iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Google Play, Player FM, and on iHeartRadio, and also on the website undertheclassicrock.com. And please, when you can, share this podcast with all your classic rock friends. I appreciate it, and I thank you for listening and downloading Under the Classic Rock, and we'll talk to you soon.